The Vorthik homeworld had never known fear like this. For centuries, they had been the ones who brought fear to others. Their fleets had darkened the skies of a dozen conquered worlds. Their soldiers had marched through the streets of alien cities while populations trembled. Now human ships hung in orbit above their own planet. And the Vorthik people looked up at the sky and understood what it felt like to be helpless. High Commander Draxel stood in the great hall of the Vorthik government building. His forearms hung at his sides. His officers had abandoned him one by one over the past 2 days. His government had collapsed as officials fled or surrendered. The people in the streets were calling for his head, blaming him for the disaster that had befallen their empire. He had refused to surrender. He had told himself that the Vorthik do not kneel to anyone, especially not to the soft humans he had mocked and dismissed. But now he stood alone in an empty hall, and the lies he had told himself were crumbling like dust. The doors opened. A group of Vorthak civilians entered, led by an elderly female who had once been a respected government minister. Behind her came a dozen others, ordinary people who had finally found the courage to act. "High Commander Draxel," the minister said, "the Council of Citizens has voted. You are no longer our leader. You will be handed over to the humans to face justice for your crimes." Draxel stared at her. "You dare? I am the High Commander. I conquered 12 systems. I made the galaxy fear us. You killed 43 civilians to feed your ego," the minister replied. "You started a war we could not win. You destroyed our empire. The galaxy does not fear us anymore. They pity us. And it is all because of you." Draxel wanted to fight. He wanted to tear through these soft civilians who dared to challenge him. But he was tired. His body ached from days without sleep. His mind was clouded with defeat. He let them take his weapons and lead him away without resistance. Captain Daniel Perry waited at the landing zone outside the government building. The Endurance was in orbit above, but Daniel had come down to the surface himself for this moment. He needed to see it with his own eyes. He needed to look at the being who had murdered 43 innocent people and called them prey. The Vorthik civilians brought Draxel forward. The once proud High Commander was now just a prisoner, his forearms bound behind his back, his head lowered. The scars on his face that he had once displayed with pride now looked like marks of shame. Daniel walked up to Draxel and stood before him. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Do you remember their names?" Daniel finally asked. "The 43 people on the morning light. Do you remember any of them?" Draxel did not answer. He would not meet Daniel's eyes. There was a doctor named Susan who volunteered because she wanted to help sick children. There was a young pilot named Kevin who had just gotten married. There were engineers and nurses and ordinary people who never hurt anyone in their lives. You killed them all to make a point. You called them soft prey. Daniel leaned closer. His voice was quiet but steady. You killed 43 people to prove we were weak. You proved nothing except your own foolishness. He stepped back and gestured to his Marines. They escorted Draxel onto a transport shuttle that would take him to a human vessel. He would be tried for his crimes before a court that included representatives from every species the Vorthik had victimized. Justice would be done properly, not through revenge or cruelty. 1 week later, the Galactic Assembly met in full session for the first time since the war began. Ambassador Linda Shaw stood at the center of the Great Hall, surrounded by representatives from dozens of species. The atmosphere was different now. The fear that had once silenced everyone was gone, replaced by something that felt like hope. Humanity did not seek this conflict, Linda said. We came to the stars hoping to find friends and partners. When we were attacked, we defended ourselves. When we won, we did not conquer. The Vorthik Empire still exists. Their people still live on their worlds. Their cities were not burned. Their civilians were not harmed. She paused and looked around the room. The Cathari representative was nodding. The Larath delegates were listening intently. Even the Malori, who had failed humanity when it mattered most, seemed to understand the importance of this moment. "We are not like the Vorthik," Linda continued. "We do not believe that strength gives us the right to abuse the weak. We do not believe that power means we can take whatever we want. We believe that with strength comes responsibility. The responsibility to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The responsibility to seek justice instead of revenge. The responsibility to build instead of destroy." She took a deep breath. "Humanity offers friendship to any species that wants it. We offer protection to those who need it. We offer trade, knowledge, and cooperation. All we ask in return is respect. Respect for our people, our boundaries, and our right to exist in peace." The Cathari representative rose. "The Cathari accept humanity's offer of friendship. We have lived under Vorthik's shadow for too long. It is time for a new beginning." The Larath stood next. "The Larath also accept. Humanity has shown that courage and honor still exist in this galaxy." One by one, species that had been silent for generations found their voices. Alliances were formed. Treaties were proposed. The galactic order that had been dominated by fear and force was changing into something better. 3 months after the war ended, a memorial was built on Earth. It stood in a garden filled with flowers from 43 different planets. One for each person who died on the morning light. Their names were carved into a wall of white stone. Their faces were displayed on screens that told their stories to anyone who wanted to listen. Captain Daniel Parry visited the memorial on a quiet afternoon. He walked slowly past each name, reading them silently. Susan the doctor, Kevin the pilot, engineers, nurses, crew members, people who had families and dreams and futures that were stolen from them. He reached the end of the wall and stopped. In his hand, he held a small bag. He opened it and took out 43 smooth stones, each one collected from a different human colony. One by one, he placed them at the base of the memorial. One for each life lost. Admiral Patricia Cole found him there as the sun was setting. She stood beside him in silence for a long time. "The families have received the reparations from the Vorthik," she finally said. "It will not bring back their loved ones, but it is something." Daniel nodded. "Draxel's trial begins next week. Representatives from every victimized species will be present. He will face justice for everything he did, not just to our people." Patricia looked at the names on the wall. "We did what we had to do. We showed the galaxy that humanity is not to be underestimated. But I hope we also showed them something else. What is that? That power does not have to mean cruelty. That strength can be used to protect instead of destroy. That justice is better than revenge." Daniel thought about her words. He thought about the Vorthik civilians who had handed over Draxel because they wanted peace. He thought about the species now seeking alliance with Earth. He thought about the future that was possible because humanity had chosen to be better than their enemies. "We are not conquerors," he said quietly. "We are not cruel. But we do not forget, and we do not forgive those who harm our own." Patricia put a hand on his shoulder. "That is exactly who we are." They stood together as the last light faded from the sky. Behind them, the names of the 43 glowed softly in the darkness. Remembered forever by a species that would never let their sacrifice be forgotten. Humanity had been provoked, and the consequences had been deadly. But in the end, they had proven something more important than military strength. They had proven that even in a galaxy filled with violence and fear, there was still room for justice, compassion, and hope. The stars above seemed brighter than before. The Vorthik Empire was bleeding. Without the fuel refineries, their massive fleet became a burden instead of a weapon. Ships that had terrorized dozens of worlds now sat in dock, unable to move. Patrols were cancelled. Expansion halted. The iron fist that had crushed so many species was slowly opening. Admiral Patricia Cole watched the reports from her command center. Her strategy was working perfectly. Human forces did not invade Vorthic space. They did not try to conquer planets or take territory. Instead, they moved like ghosts through the darkness between stars, striking military targets and then vanishing before the enemy could respond. 3rd Battle Group destroyed the supply depot at Norvin Station, General Frank Murray reported. No civilian casualties. The Vorthic garrison surrendered after their shields went down. Patricia nodded. And their response? Draxel ordered a counterattack, but his ships ran out of fuel before reaching our forces. 2 of his cruisers are now drifting in empty space, waiting for rescue that may never come. This was the heart of Patricia's strategy. She was not trying to destroy the Vorthic military in open battle. She was strangling it slowly, cutting off supplies and support, while avoiding the kind of direct confrontation where superior numbers would matter. Every day, the Vorthic grew weaker. Every day, humanity grew stronger in comparison. Nathan Cross entered the room with new intelligence reports. The Vorthic subject worlds are getting restless, he said. 3 species have stopped paying tribute. 2 others have sent secret messages to our embassy asking about defensive alliances. The Empire is cracking, Patricia said. When Draxel killed those 43 people, he thought he was showing strength. Instead, he showed the galaxy that the Vorthic are cruel but not invincible. She pulled up a map of Vorthic space. Red dots showed human strikes over the past 2 weeks. There were dozens of them, scattered across the Empire like drops of blood. Supply depots, communication stations, patrol bases, weapons factories. Each target was chosen carefully to cause maximum disruption with minimum loss of life. We are not conquerors, Patricia reminded her staff. We do not want their territory or their wealth. We want justice for the people they killed, and we want to ensure they can never do this again. On Concordance Prime, Ambassador Linda Shaw faced a very different kind of battle. The Galactic Assembly had called an emergency session to discuss the human attacks. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Hall, many of them confused and frightened by what was happening. The Mallory representative, the same one who had refused to help after the Morning Light was destroyed, rose to speak. The human attacks are destabilizing the entire region. We demand an immediate ceasefire. Linda stepped forward. Her voice was calm and clear. Where was your demand for peace when Draxel murdered 43 innocent civilians? Where was your concern for stability when he broadcast their deaths to the galaxy and called us prey? The Mallory had no answer. He looked away, unable to meet her eyes. Humanity did not start this conflict, Linda continued. We came to the galactic community seeking trade and friendship. We were met with contempt and violence. When we asked this assembly for justice, you looked away because you were afraid of the Vorthic. Now you ask us to stop defending ourselves because you are afraid of us. She paused and looked around the room. Many representatives were watching her closely. Some of them had suffered under Vorthic rule for generations. Some had lost their own people to Vorthic aggression. We do not seek empire, Linda said. We do not want to rule over other species or take their worlds. We want only what any civilized people want. Safety for our citizens, justice for our dead, and the knowledge that those who harm us will face consequences. The assembly was silent. Then, slowly, the representative from a species called the Cathari rose to her feet. The Cathari were small beings with blue skin who had been paying tribute to the Vorthic for 100 years. Humanity speaks truth, she said. The Vorthic have oppressed us for generations. No one helped us because everyone was afraid. Now someone is finally standing up to them, and you want to stop it. More representatives began to speak. The Lorth, whose homeworld had been conquered by the Vorthok decades ago, expressed support for humanity. The Veni, who had watched the Vorthok destroy their colony ships without consequence, offered intelligence about Vorthok fleet movements. One by one, species that had been silent for years found their voices. Linda felt something change in the room. The fear that had protected the Vorthok for so long was breaking down. Humanity had shown that the Empire could be hurt, and that knowledge was spreading back in Vorthok space. Draxel was losing control. His attempts to rally his fleet had failed. Ships sent to stop human raids arrived too late or ran out of fuel before reaching their targets. His officers were beginning to question his orders openly. His allies were distancing themselves, sensing that the Empire was falling. He sat alone in his war room, staring at reports of his losses. 23 military installations destroyed or captured. 47 ships disabled or lost. Fuel reserves down to 8 days. The humans had not killed many Vorthok soldiers, but they had crippled his ability to fight. A message arrived from Earth Space Command. Draxel opened it reluctantly. "High Commander Draxel," the message read. 43 innocent people died because you wanted to prove that humans are weak. You were wrong. We are not weak, and we do not forget. This message is a reminder that every action you ordered against us has a consequence. The 43 families who lost loved ones are watching. The galaxy is watching. And we are watching. This is not over. Draxel crushed the communication device in his 4 hands. He wanted to scream, to order his entire fleet to attack Earth itself. But he knew he could not. His fleet could barely move. His empire was being dismantled piece by piece. His senior advisor entered the room. "High Commander, we have received word from the Cathari and the Lorth. They are refusing to pay tribute and have closed their borders to our ships." "Traitors," Draxel growled. "When this is over, we will punish them." "High Commander, forgive me, but how will we punish anyone? Our fleet cannot reach them. Our fuel is almost gone. Our allies have abandoned us. Perhaps it is time to consider negotiation." Draxel turned on his advisor with fury in his eyes. "Negotiate with prey? Never. The Vorthok do not surrender." But even as he spoke the words, he knew they were hollow. The humans had outhawed him at every turn. They had taken his strength and turned it into weakness. They had shown the galaxy that the mighty Vorthok could be brought low by a species they had dismissed as soft and worthless. The final blow came 3 days later. Human ships appeared in orbit around the Vorthok homeworld. They did not attack. They simply waited, their weapons ready, their message clear. The orbital defense platforms that protected the planet tried to lock on, but human electronic warfare disabled them one by one. Within hours, the Vorthok homeworld was defenseless. Admiral Patricia Cole sent one final message to Draxel. "Your defenses are down. Your fleet cannot save you. Your empire is finished. We could destroy your cities from orbit, but we will not. We are not like you. We do not murder civilians to prove our strength. Instead, we offer you a choice. Surrender and face justice for your crimes, or watch your people suffer for your pride. The decision is yours, but know this. We will wait as long as it takes. We have already won." Draxel read the message in his war room. Around him, his officers stood in silence. They had followed him for years, believing in his vision of Vorthok supremacy. Now they saw the truth. Their leader had doomed them all because he could not resist. Killing 43 people he considered beneath his notice. The hunt was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The Kethra system was quiet. 2 massive fuel refineries floated in orbit around a gas giant, processing the raw materials that powered the Vorthok war machine. 50 warships patrolled the area in lazy circles. Their crews were bored. Nothing ever happened at Kethras. The refineries were too far from any enemy, too well defended for anyone to attack. The Vorthic soldiers played games and complained about the dull assignment. Captain Daniel Perry watched the system through the sensors of the Endurance. His ship was hidden behind a small moon, running silent with all systems powered down. Around him, 39 other human vessels waited in the darkness. They had traveled for 8 days through empty space, avoiding all traffic, using no communications that could be detected. Task Force 2 reports ready, Maria Santos said quietly. She was monitoring the hidden relay stations that connected the 3 human strike groups across hundreds of light years. Task Force 3 is also in position. Daniel checked the time. In exactly 4 minutes, all 3 task forces would attack at the same moment. The coordination had to be perfect. If one group moved too early, the Vorthic could warn the other refineries. If one group moved too late, they would face reinforced defenses. All ships confirm weapons are armed, Kyle Bennett reported. His voice was calm, but Daniel could see the tension in his shoulders. We are ready. Daniel opened the channel to his task force. This is Captain Perry. Remember why we are here. 43 people died because Draxel wanted to show the galaxy that humans are weak. We are about to prove him wrong. Execute on my mark. 3 minutes. The minutes passed slowly. Daniel thought about Susan, the doctor who had volunteered to help sick children. He thought about Kevin, the young pilot who had just gotten married. He thought about all the families still grieving. This was for them. 1 minute, Maria said. The Vorthic patrols continued their lazy circles. They had no idea that death was waiting in the shadows. 30 seconds. Daniel gripped the arms of his command chair. Around him, his crew was focused and ready. They had trained for this moment for 3 months. 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. 40 human ships surged forward from behind the moon. The Vorthic detected them immediately, but by then it was already too late. The humans had positioned themselves perfectly, cutting off the patrol ships from the refineries. All batteries fire, Daniel ordered. The space around Kethras lit up with weapons fire. Human missiles and energy beams tore into the Vorthic formation. The enemy ships tried to respond, but they were caught off guard and out of position. The humans had studied their patrol patterns for months. They knew exactly where each ship would be. Commander Rachel Foster led the fighter squadrons into battle. She was a woman with red hair and a reputation for being the best pilot in the fleet. Her squadron dove through the Vorthic formation like wolves through sheep. Human pilots were faster, more creative, more willing to take risks. The Vorthic trained their pilots to follow strict patterns and formations. When those patterns broke down, they struggled to adapt. Watch your spacing, Rachel called to her pilots. Stay loose and keep moving. Do not let them box you in. Her fighters swarmed around a Vorthic cruiser, hitting its engines from 3 directions at once. The cruiser spun out of control and crashed into another Vorthic ship. Both vessels exploded in a ball of flame and debris. On the Endurance, Daniel commanded the main assault. His ships formed a wedge that pushed through the center of the Vorthic defense. They were not trying to destroy every enemy ship. They were trying to reach the refineries. Sergeant Reyes, prepare your Marines. Daniel ordered. Victor Reyes was a big man with dark skin and hands that had seen more combat than most people could imagine. He led the Marine assault teams that would board the refineries and capture their control centers. His soldiers were already in their landing craft, waiting for the signal. We are ready, Captain, Victor replied. Just get us close. The battle was fierce but short. The Vorthic had numbers, but the humans had surprise and planning. Within 20 minutes, the patrol fleet was broken. Some enemy ships fled. Others were disabled or destroyed. The path to the refineries was open. "Launch assault teams," Daniel ordered. 12 landing craft shot toward the refineries. Victor and his Marines hit the main structure at full speed, cutting through the outer hull with breaching charges. They poured into the refinery with weapons ready. The Vorthik inside were not prepared. They were technicians and workers, not soldiers. Some tried to fight and were quickly defeated. Others surrendered. Victor moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency, securing each section before moving to the next. "Control room is ahead," one of his soldiers reported. 10 Vorthik inside. They have sealed the door. Victor looked at the heavy door. "Bring up the cutters." "We go through in 30 seconds." The cutting tools sliced through the door like it was made of paper. Victor and his Marines burst into the control room. The Vorthik technicians raised their hands in surrender. The refinery belonged to humanity now. "Kethras is secured," Victor reported to Daniel. "Refinery is intact and under our control." Similar reports came in from the other 2 refineries. Task Force 2 had taken Volman with minimal losses. Task Force 3 had faced harder resistance at Dreth, but it still succeeded. All 3 Vorthik fuel refineries were now in human hands. The entire operation had taken 6 hours. The Vorthik Empire, which had terrified the galaxy for centuries, had just lost the ability to fuel its war machine. Daniel looked at the captured refinery through his viewport. He felt no joy. This was not a celebration. This was justice. "Send a message to the Vorthik High Command," Daniel said. "Tell them what we have done. Tell them this is the consequence of murdering 43 innocent people. Tell them we are just getting started." The message was sent across every communication channel in the galaxy. Within hours, every species knew what had happened. The humans, who everyone thought were broken and hiding, had struck the Vorthik where it hurt most. The impossible had been achieved. On the Vorthik homeworld, Draxel received the news in his private chambers. His officers stood before him, their faces showing fear for the first time. The fuel refineries were gone. The fleet had perhaps 2 weeks of reserves. After that, their ships would be helpless. How is this possible? Draxel demanded. How did they coordinate attacks across 3 systems simultaneously? No species has ever done this. His senior commander lowered his head. "We underestimated them, High Commander. We believe they were weak." Draxel slammed his 4 fists against the table, cracking the surface. "They are weak. They are prey. This changes nothing. Order the fleet to assemble. We will crush them with overwhelming force. High Commander, without the refineries, our fuel supplies are limited. If we commit the full fleet and the campaign takes longer than expected, we could lose everything." Draxel did not want to hear this. He wanted to believe his own words about human weakness. He wanted to believe that this was just a temporary setback. But somewhere deep inside, a small voice was whispering that he had made a terrible mistake. The galaxy was watching. The species that had bowed to the Vorthik for generations were now wondering if the Empire was as strong as it claimed. The humans had proven that the mighty could be hurt. And they were not finished yet. In her command center on Earth, Admiral Patricia Cole received confirmation of all 3 successful strikes. She allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. "The hunt starts now." The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Every colony, every station, every ship heard about the morning light. They saw the recording that Draxel had broadcast to the galaxy. They read the names of the 43 people who died. Within hours, billions of humans knew what the Vorthik had done. Admiral Patricia Cole stood in the command center of Earth Space Command. She was 62 years old, with white hair cut short and eyes that had seen 3 wars. She had built the human fleet from a small defense force into something that could protect their colonies. Now she watched reports come in from across human territory. People were angry. They wanted action. They wanted revenge. General Frank Murray stood beside her. He was a large man with a thick beard and hands that had once carried a rifle in ground combat. Now he planned strategies and moved fleets like pieces on a game board. "The outer colonies are demanding we strike back," he said. 2 governors have already called for war. Patricia shook her head slowly. War is what Drexel wants. He expects us to attack with everything we have. His fleet is 3 times the size of ours. If we charge in blindly, he will destroy us and then take our colonies one by one. So what do? Nothing. We do something far more dangerous than attacking, Patricia said. We think. She called a meeting of her senior staff. 20 officers gathered in a secure room deep beneath the surface of Earth. The doors were sealed, and no signals could enter or leave. What they discussed would remain secret. The Vorthik believe they understand us, Patricia began. They believe we are emotional, impulsive, and weak. They expect us to either surrender or attack foolishly. We will do neither. We will disappear. The officers looked confused. A young captain raised his hand. Disappear, Admiral? All human ships will withdraw from contested zones. We will pull back our patrols. We will stop responding to Vorthik provocations. We will go quiet. General Murray understood. A slow smile spread across his face. We let them think they have broken us. Exactly. While they celebrate their victory, we will be preparing. I want every shipyard working at full capacity. I want our intelligence networks mapping every Vorthik weakness. I want plans for strikes they cannot imagine. Nathan Cross stepped forward. He was a thin man with glasses and the kind of face that no one remembered after meeting him. This made him perfect for his job as the head of human intelligence operations. I have already begun gathering information on the Vorthik military structure. There is something interesting. He activated a display that showed a map of Vorthik space. 3 points glowed red. The Vorthik fleet is massive, but it has a critical weakness. Their ships require a specific type of fuel that can only be refined at these 3 locations. The refineries at Kethras, Volman, and Dreth supply their entire military. Patricia studied the map. If those refineries were destroyed, their fleet would be crippled. They would have enough fuel reserves for perhaps 2 weeks of normal operations, Nathan said. After that, their ships would have to shut down or return to dock. General Murray leaned forward. Those refineries are heavily defended. Each one has a battle station and at least 50 warships protecting it. Which is why no one has ever attacked them, Nathan replied. The Vorthik believe they are untouchable. But our analysis shows that if we hit all 3 simultaneously, before they can reinforce each other, we can take them. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Simultaneous strikes across 3 star systems. That has never been done before. The coordination required would be beyond anything in galactic history. The Vorthik certainly believe it is impossible, Nathan said. Their entire defensive strategy assumes no one could organize such an attack. They have spread their fleet thin across their empire to intimidate other species. They are not prepared for an enemy that can strike everywhere at once. Patricia nodded slowly. Begin the preparations. But this stays secret. As far as the galaxy knows, humanity is broken and hiding. Over the next 3 months, the Vorthik watched with satisfaction as humans seemed to crumble. Human ships no longer appeared in disputed zones. Human ambassadors withdrew from galactic gatherings. Human colonies stopped sending trade delegations. The news networks of other species reported that the human government was in chaos, that their people had lost hope. that the destruction of the morning light had shown them their true weakness. Draxel gave speeches about human cowardice. He sent his ships deeper into territory near human space, taking resources and demanding tribute from smaller species. He told the Galactic Assembly that humans would soon come begging for mercy. His confidence grew with each passing week, but behind the silence, humanity was preparing. Shipyards on Mars and Europa worked day and night building new vessels. Weapons factories produced missiles and energy cells without stopping. Training camps pushed pilots and soldiers harder than ever before. Every resource of human civilization was being directed toward a single purpose. Nathan Cross built a network of spies that reached into Vorthic space itself. Some were humans who had been captured and then escaped, carrying information back with them. Others were members of alien species who hated the Vorthic and wanted to see them fall. Information flowed to Earth constantly. Fleet positions, patrol schedules, communication codes, defense layouts. Every detail was recorded and analyzed. 3 months after the morning light was destroyed, Patricia Cole stood before a gathering of 120 ship captains. They had assembled in secret at a hidden base in an asteroid field, far from any known trade routes. No signals left the base. No one outside knew they were there. "In 12 days we strike," Patricia said. 3 task forces will hit the fuel refineries at Kethris, Volman, and Dreth at exactly the same moment. We will use communication relays hidden in deep space to coordinate our timing down to the second. The Vorthic will have no warning and no time to react. The captains listened in silence. Many of them had known people on the morning light. All of them had watched Draxel's broadcast. "This will not be easy," Patricia continued. "Some of us will not come home. But we are not doing this for conquest or glory. We are doing this because 43 innocent people were murdered, and the one who killed them is still laughing about it. We are doing this because the galaxy needs to learn that humanity does not forget, and we do not allow crimes against our people to go unanswered." She looked at each captain in turn. They wanted to see what humans do when pushed. "Let us show them." The captains returned to their ships. Final preparations began. Crews were briefed and equipment was checked. Families sent messages of love and hope, not knowing where their loved ones were going, but understanding that something important was happening. The Vorthic homeworld. Draxel received a report that human activity remained minimal. His advisors told him that the human threat was over. He had broken them without even trying. He ordered a celebration and drank to his own greatness. He did not know that 120 human warships were moving through space toward his empire. He did not know that his fuel refineries had been mapped down to the smallest detail. He did not know that every weakness in his defenses had been found and recorded. The storm was coming, and Draxel could not see it. The space station called Concordance Prime floated in the darkness between 3 solar systems. It was a place where dozens of alien species came to trade and talk. The station was neutral ground where no weapons were allowed and no wars could be fought. For 200 years, it had served as a meeting place for the galaxy. Humans had only been part of this galactic community for 30 years, and many older species still saw them as newcomers who did not matter. Captain Daniel Perry stood near the observation window of the station and watched ships come and go. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many things. His ship, the Endurance, waited outside the station. It was not a warship, but an escort vessel meant to protect diplomats. Daniel had commanded it for 5 years and knew every sound it made. Ambassador Linda Shaw walked up beside him. She was a woman in her 50s with short brown hair and a face that showed both kindness and strength. She had spent 20 years building relationships with alien species and believed that peace was always possible if people tried hard enough. "The Vorthic delegation arrives in 1 hour," Linda said. I have heard they are not happy with our trade proposals. Daniel nodded slowly. The Vorthic Empire was one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. They had conquered 12 star systems and ruled over billions of beings. Their soldiers were tall creatures with 4 arms and thick gray skin that could stop most weapons. They believed strength was everything, and that the weak existed only to serve the strong. They have never liked us, Daniel said. We do not bow to them like other species do. Linda smiled slightly. That is exactly why they do not like us. 1 hour later, the main hall of the station was filled with representatives from 30 different species. They sat in chairs designed for their various body shapes, while floating screens showed translations of every word spoken. Daniel stood with his officers near the back of the room. Lieutenant Kyle Bennett was beside him, a young man with sharp eyes who handled all tactical matters. Ensign Maria Santos stood on his other side, a quiet woman who understood communications better than anyone Daniel had ever met. The Vorthic delegation entered through the main doors. There were 6 of them, all wearing black armor that showed their military rank. At their head walked High Commander Draxel. He was larger than the others, with scars across his face that he displayed with pride. His 4 arms were crossed over his chest as he looked around the room with obvious disgust. Draxel walked to the center of the hall and did not wait for permission to speak. I have an announcement for this assembly, he said. His voice was deep and carried easily through the room. 3 hours ago, my fleet encountered a human cargo ship in the Nearth Corridor. This ship was traveling through space that the Vorthic Empire claims as our own. Daniel felt his stomach tighten. The Nearth Corridor was disputed territory that no one officially controlled. The ship refused to submit to inspection, Draxel continued. It tried to run. My vessels were forced to respond. He raised one of his arms and pressed a button on his wrist. A large screen appeared in the air above him. It showed a recording from a Vorthic warship. Daniel watched as 3 Vorthic cruisers surrounded a small human cargo vessel. The cargo ship was called the Morning Light, and it was trying to escape, but it was too slow. The Vorthic ships fired together. The Morning Light exploded in a flash of light and debris. The room was silent. Daniel could not move. He knew that ship. It carried medical supplies to a colony world where children were sick with a disease that needed those supplies. 43 people had been on board. Doctors, nurses, pilots, engineers. All of them were now dead. Let this be a lesson, Draxel said loudly. Humans are soft prey. They are not worthy of respect in this galaxy. Any human ship that enters Vorthic space will meet the same fate. Linda stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. You murdered 43 civilians. They were carrying medicine to sick children. This is a crime against all civilized beings. Draxel laughed. It was an ugly sound. Crime? There is no crime when the strong take from the weak. Your people should have known better than to fly near our territory. Perhaps now they will learn their place. Linda turned to the assembly. I demand that this body take action. The Vorthic have committed an act of war against humanity. The other species looked away. No one spoke. Daniel understood why. The Vorthic were too powerful. No one wanted to anger them. The assembly would do nothing because they were afraid. The lead representative of the assembly, an elderly being from a species called the Mallory, finally spoke. This is a matter between the Vorthic Empire and the human government. The assembly has no authority to intervene in territorial disputes. Territorial disputes. Linda's voice rose. They destroyed a medical ship. The matter is closed, the Mallory said. He would not meet her eyes. Drx all smiled at Linda. It was the smile of someone who knew they had won. Go home, Ambassador. Tell your people what happens when they forget their place. The Vorthic do not make threats. We make examples. He turned and walked out of the hall, with his delegation following behind him. The other species began to leave quickly, none of them willing to look at the humans. Daniel walked to Linda's side. Her hands were shaking slightly. "We need to contact Earth," she said quietly. "They need to know what happened." "I already sent a message," Maria said. She had tears in her eyes, but her voice was professional. "Command says we are to stand down and wait for instructions." Kyle made a small sound of frustration. "Stand down?" "They killed our people. They broadcast it to the entire galaxy." "Those are our orders," Daniel said. His voice was calm, but something cold had settled in his chest. "We follow orders." They returned to the Endurance and left the station. Daniel sat alone in his quarters that night and watched the recording of the morning light being destroyed. He watched it 7 times. He read the names of everyone who had died. He looked at their faces in the crew manifest. There was a young pilot named Kevin who had just gotten married. There was a doctor named Susan who had volunteered for the mission because she wanted to help children. There were engineers and nurses and ordinary people who had never hurt anyone. Draxel had called them soft prey. He had laughed while announcing their deaths. He believed humans would do nothing because he thought humans were weak. He thought fear would keep them quiet. Daniel turned off the screen and sat in the darkness. He thought about his own children back on Earth. He thought about the families who would never see their loved ones again. He thought about Draxel's smile. His communicator buzzed. It was a message from Earth Command. New orders were coming. Something was being planned. The message did not say what, but Daniel could read between the lines. He stood up and walked to the bridge where his crew was waiting. They all looked at him with the same expression. They were angry and sad and ready for whatever came next. Kyle, Maria, and a dozen others who had served with him for years. "They have no idea what they have just started," Daniel said quietly. No one disagreed.